Good
my.
morning, everybody. I hope you're all able to see us. We've had technical difficulties, and I am hoping we are live. I am recording. Uh, and I am so excited that you're here, Doug, and that we were able to make this work. So I am
I'm excited too. This is the fastest I think we've ever set this thing up on this side. So
I'm telling
usually I
you,
got Ricardo going, no, do this.
this was about 15 minutes of chaos. So I'm happy we're here, but I'm going to turn this over to you, Doug.
It works. Thank you very kindly. I appreciate that. Thank you. Hey, everybody. Good morning and happy holidays to all y'all out there. So it's nice to have that. Look, we get a look at Kaylee and her kid right there. That's nice. Anyway, so today's class is multi-generational mythbusters because I hear so much about multi-generations. Every time I go anywhere, and even when I was working full-time, I heard it all the time. These new generations, you know how they are. It's going to be trouble. And I'm like, it's really not. We need to kind of look at things differently. And I will tell you this, that I approach this stuff way differently than you're probably used to. And you're probably going to say, hey, I never really considered it like that. So I'm kind of confused. But before we get started, I just want to do a couple of little thank yous to Ricardo for hosting these Dare to Be Great things, because it's just so great to have this stuff. And I know he said, this is our last one and I'm never going to do it again. He's going to do it again because we're going to put so much pressure on him to do it because these are so valuable. And whenever I go around the country talking about this, about what we do, I always bring up Ricardo's stuff and say, look, man, this is free training. If y'all are missing this, it's on you. It's just crazy. So it's free training. And I'm hoping Ricardo says, you know what? All right, I'll do it again. So we'll do it and we'll do what we can out there. Another little thing is he's allowed us to be a gold member, which is always nice to have that kind of, a gold sponsor, gold sponsor. And it's kind of nice to have that too. So, I mean, it's nice. And one more throw out to the people on the West Coast in Malibu who are dealing with these horrific brush fires. When I lived in California, it was such a common occurrence. And I know it's all over the news right now that these big brush fires are going on in Malibu and they're threatening a lot of houses, things like that. So our thoughts and prayers go out to all those folks working these things in public safety. So let's get rolling. If you don't know who I am, I'm Doug Showalter, and I do operate Showalter and Company. We're a training provider. We do all kinds of training for dispatchers, not just dispatch anymore, because we've been kind of reaching out. We did a class for FBI. We did a class for on people that make the life flight helicopters. So it's like we've been out there doing all kinds of things. So we can kind of deliver a message, and our message is pretty solid with our topic of leave a legacy. You'll hear me talk about that in a second. But we do have our 4 hardcore classes we teach is Training for Success, which is our version of CTO, but it approaches training from a business perspective. What's working out in the real world, and how come we're not doing it in here? And making our people successful, and making our entire focus on success. That's a big one out there. You're not just doing time and dispatch. It's a customer service kind of situation out there. The business of leadership and expecting the unexpected. Please check us out if you get a chance. See what's going on with that kind of thing out there. One other thing is our little podcast social media program. It's available on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and every podcast channel you could think of. It's We Speak Dispatch. We're doing so well with this thing. We started out a couple of years ago. We're at 40,000 podcast plays in over 50 countries. So we are all over the place. Each podcast is only 15 minutes long on purpose, so you can listen to it on your way to work, your way home, or on a break. And we have great guests. If you want to be a guest on it, just go look us up and you can be a guest and talk about whatever. So we put up a new broadcast about every week. So just check them out if you get a chance. So today's topic connects everybody because we're all part of this thing about generations. And you hear it all the time. Oh, you're a boomer. Oh, you're a Gen Z. You're a millennial. And now they've even added on Gen Alpha, which is the brand new kids, which, holy kitten, that's a lot of stuff out there. But we're going to talk about these misconceptions and these biases that have been put into everybody by what they say in the media and all over the place about, well, if you're a boomer, you're supposed to be like this. And if you're a Gen Z, you're going to act like that. And it's like we need to start thinking it differently. And that's what my whole goal is today, is to make you think a little differently. Consider all the different generations you deal with right now, every day. Parents, children, peers, friends, hell, even the person at the cashier at the grocery store. my personal experience has been, I went to the grocery store and we were buying some adult beverages, you know, and the nice young lady behind the counter said, "Can I see your ID?" I show her my ID and she goes, "Oh my gosh, my mom's born, or my grandmother was born that year." And I'm like, holy cow, this child needs to get back in a stroller. It's just one of those things where it's like people start immediately assuming, oh, you're this, that means you're that. If you're this, that means that. And we have to consider these things. From boomers to Gen Z, generation supposedly has, each generation has specific likes, learning styles, behaviors based on nothing but their date of birth. Just because you were born on that year, now I expect you to behave like this and like that and do these things out there. So, I mean, a workplace with multiple generations can prove to be a tremendous asset. I mean, you got all these different things coming in, but it can also create some challenges for those trying to accommodate all these new groups that are coming in. Big changes are on the way to every comm center out there right now. I'm telling you right now, the largest workforce in America is made up of people like me, baby boomers. However, by 2029, most will have reached retirement age. Now, look at, I worked for the California Highway Patrol for 30 years. And when I retired, I moved to Tennessee. Now it's where I live out here. But I did 30 years with that. And I guarantee a lot of people in my age group are approaching retirement age, which means in about 5 or 10 years, we're going to have 5,000 to 10,000 boomers are going to start retiring every month. 50% of those are in leadership positions, which means there's going to be openings, which means who's going to fill it, which means are you going to be ready to step up and say, I can take over this thing. I can keep this message going out there or not. Who is going to take over when we all reach our retirement age out there? I mean, just listening to people describe generations, I mean, my gosh, you could assume there's a literal war going on between them. Challenges, misconceptions, unreliable biases based on nothing but your age. How old are you? When you walk through the door of a comm center as a new employee, do people look at you and say, oh, they're way too old? Are they way too young? Or, oh my gosh, they're going to want a trophy for everything they do? Really? I mean, Google has search results like this: 17 reasons why millennials are the worst generation. What? Why boomers have ruined it for everybody. And why do those Gen Zers act like they know everything? When you start having results come out like that, that's going to make people think, yeah, maybe they are the worst generation. Maybe they are ruining it for everybody. And we have to kind of think, is that really true? Is that really what we want? Probably not. A lot of agencies out there trying to figure out how to manage each of these multiple generations. I mean, oh my gosh, I have heard some stories. I have read some stuff about how these new people that have started into the workforce, they need to be coddled. They need to be given breaks all the time. They need to be given time off, bereavement leave for pets. They need to work at home maybe. They need to take extra days off, unlimited sick days. Wait a minute. I mean, is this a business we're running, or is this some sort of childcare? We have to say to ourselves, are we dumbing down things for people based solely on, well, you know, that new generation, you know how they are? Or are we saying, wait a minute, if we treat people like adults, they'll act like adults. If we treat people like children where they have to be appeased and, oh, let's give them an award, let's give them a trophy, let's do this or that, then that's exactly what they're going to behave like. I love that saying that's on the screen right now that says, if you want to make everybody happy, don't be a leader, sell ice cream. Because I see a lot of agencies doing whatever they can. Hell, I heard of an agency that offers people to have puzzles and finger painting and things like that while they're working. And I'm like, is this a business, or are we simply a childcare place? This is a business. People need to say, I'm doing a really cool job and I'm excited about it. I don't need to say, I'm at this really cool job that better give me stuff. I mean, we have to kind of consider, wait a minute, I want people to be proud of where they work, not look at it as, what are they going to give me? What am I going to get out of it? And we have to consider those things out there. So I do this exercise in classes sometimes, and it really amazes me. I put everybody in groups, and I ask everybody to draw. You can't write any words, but just draw what best represents each generation for you. And I break all the generations down, and I have everybody draw these things. And invariably, I'll have people that are drawing about the baby boomers writing like cemeteries, hospitals, wheelchairs. And I'm like, holy cow, is that what you think of the baby boomers? I mean, I'm not in a wheelchair. I'm not in a hospital right now. I'm out there doing whatever I can. So are we assuming my behaviors, my likes, my dislikes based on how old I am? Is that fair to anybody? Probably not. If I was to ask each one of you, what is your interpretation of each of these generations? What is your interpretation of a boomer? What's your interpretation of a Gen Y or a Gen Z or a Gen X? What do you think automatically comes to mind? We have a lot of people telling us this is what they are. This is exactly how they should behave. I mean, we need to kind of make sure we have these things. Generational stereotypes. I mean, here's some stereotypes that are out there. You know, we'll talk about these in a second. But boomers like myself, are generally considered hard workers. In fact, we can think of the term workaholic. Now, I've never touched a drop of workahol, but we've been accused of being workaholics because we start work so early, 15, 16 years old, and we worked our entire lives out there. Boomers comprise roughly 60% of all the world leaders out there right now. All the world leaders are boomers. What's that mean? When they go, somebody's taking over. Somebody's going to start running these things. Gen X's are usually very resourceful, independent, possibly because they were a lot of latchkey kids. They had to fend for themselves and do things. I mean, they also help create that term work-life balance. I mean, we have to think about that. Millennials. Now, I know we probably have a lot of millennials out here right now. I'm sure we do. Millennials may be narcissistic and entitled, but they're very, very tech savvy because they grew up with that stuff. They didn't have rotary phones or pagers or any of that stuff. They had some cool stuff when they started out there. And for some reason, they love avocados. I'm not sure what that kind of comes into play, but I've heard that they do. Avocado toast is a big thing nowadays, so we'll see that. And finally, Gen Zers. Gen Zers are known for their online presence, which includes shopping, dating, making friends, spending much of their time on their phones out there. These are stereotypes, generational stereotypes based on nothing but their age. Do they apply to every single person out there? Probably not. We have to consider these things. A lot of research people have claimed these stereotypes have created a self-fulfilling prophecy, meaning people take on these behaviors because they've been told that's how they're supposed to be. That's how you're supposed to act. I shouldn't be tech savvy. I should be sitting with a shawl around my shoulders, I guess, sitting quietly. But it doesn't apply to me, nor I bet it doesn't apply to a lot of you out there. I mean, a lot of people claim these alleged behaviors associated with specific age groups because they haven't considered the most important factors that go into what we're like. I mean, can people say, well, it's not my fault. This is what my generation says I have to do. So when you get people asking for additional time off or all these other things, maybe that's what they were told they have to be like. This is what they should be like. I mean, we don't want to have that kind of stuff. As much as they try to categorize each generation, if you think about it logically, and this is where it comes into play here, if you think about it logically, we are so much more similar than we are different. Every generation wants and needs the same kind of things out there. I mean, for instance, everybody of every age group would love to know your work actually matters. I did 30 years with the California Highway Patrol. I hope to hell my work mattered. I didn't spend 30 years just to hang out with people because I knew we were making a difference every day. And that doesn't change with anybody's age group out there. Everybody wants to know what you're doing impacts everybody. And that's important to have these things. But they also want some flexibility in the workplace. Sure, we used to change our shifts and stuff like that. We came up with scheduling based on different things. It wasn't to accommodate some, oh, it's a Gen X or B, make sure. It was to get us the best staffing and the best work for our employees. Makes them happy, makes us happy. Everybody's happy with this thing, not based on just their age and, oh my gosh, this is how old they are. I mean, everybody wants some support from above. There is nothing better than having somebody say, hey, good job on that call. Or, hey, thanks for helping me out. Everybody wants that. I don't know of a generation out there that says, you know what? No, I don't want any kind of thank you. I'm here. That's it. We all want some kind of appreciation out there. I mean, we all want to have that sincere appreciation of, I do appreciate what you did for a living, because we don't get it a lot from our callers, right? The callers aren't going to tell us this stuff, but our coworkers, our supervisors, our management, whoever it is in charge of you out there, and our peers should be willing to say, good job on that. Good job. That's a good thing out there. I mean, none of those things we just talked about are specifically tied to an age group. None of them. It's important to have these things. Avoiding stereotypes and generalities. I mean, don't put people in a box based on the year they were born, because it's almost as accurate as a horoscope. Do you ever sit there and say, hey, we would hire you, but unfortunately you're a Libra. And Libras, you know how they are. We would never say such a thing. We would never tell each other, hey, you see how they're acting on the floor? It's because they're a Gemini, and Gemini has two personalities. What in the world? We're not like that. We don't want to have those kinds of things out there. Like those personality or learning style quizzes that you get sometimes. We used to do a bunch of them. Purportedly identifies how you learn. It says, oh, you're a type A, or you're a B, or you're whatever. I mean, all those things, because that'll justify your actions. Oh, you know why I didn't get it? Because I'm this. You know why I didn't do well? Because I'm that. See, it's providing these excuses out there for everybody to say, this is why I can't do this stuff. This is why I got this. I mean, generational stereotypes are also vague enough to apply to anybody. I mean, but they're too vague to be significant to your performance. I mean, you can say, well, you know, those Gen X's, you know, they are. Well, it's so general that it can apply to anybody. And a lot of times it does. I identify with with a way different age group than I'm in right now. I don't identify with boomers and say, oh, yeah, this is what's going on. But I've got the experience behind me to say I'm a boomer. I've been on the job 30 years. I got this stuff. Avoiding some more stereotypes and generalities. I mean, we need to recognize employees as individuals. And this is where I differ from a lot of people out there who look at generational stuff and think that's how they are. Let's gear our job to them because this is that age group out there. No, see, I need to recognize all employees as individuals. I mean, everybody has unique experiences, different family dynamics, along with unique skills and abilities. It's important to find those strengths of each person that can be utilized in the workplace. What are these individual things that somebody walks in that door with? I usually ask everybody in classes, why did they pick you? Why did they hire you? Out of everybody they could have hired, why did they hire you? I mean, you brought something to the job that somebody said, you know what, this would work. This would be good for us. We need to have that kind of thing. I mean, effective, honest communication is essential to build this individuality. From body language, facial expressions, to the words we say and the words we write, we've all been communicating in some way since the moment we're born. And yet, effective communication in a comms environment can still be exceedingly difficult. We hear this all the time. Whenever I teach a leadership class, one of the biggest issues is understanding the importance of maintaining open and effective communication. I don't know why people in leadership positions, even CTOs, because they're in a leadership position too, have trouble communicating with each other, even on the floor. Peer to peer, there's this communication lag where it's kind of like, oh, I don't want to say nothing and I don't want to get into a thing with these people. It's like we have to kind of think, wait a minute, if communication is our goal, that's going to establish these things, make individuality. It's important to have that stuff. How about opening communication by appreciating your employees' experiences? Do you ever think to yourself, if you've got an employee on the floor that's got 20 or 30 years on the job, I'll bet they've got some great experiences. I'll bet if they chose to share some of those experiences, it'd probably be pretty damn cool. We have to kind of think to ourselves, do I have the ability to appreciate how long they've been on? Now, we used to do it all the time because I would sit new people with a senior person, not to train for the day, just to kind of talk about what they've experienced. And it's nice to have them say, hey, I went through this and I had this and I had these things and I learned this out of that. Not just complain about it, but say, what did you learn out of this? That's what's important, to have that kind of stuff, to think, how can I appreciate our employees' experiences and think, man, they've been through a lot. Let me harvest that information and say, how can I use that in the future? And that's why it's important to build that bridge of communication with everybody. Everybody should be sharing their experiences of what happened. What'd you learn from this incident? We had this thing, and that's my friend Marsha on the screen right there. We had this thing, post-traumatic growth. I never heard of it before, but she was talking about it a couple of days because we had an officer get killed. And she said, after a while, a couple of weeks went by, she said, Doug, what did we learn from that event? And I was like, I'm not sure. And she goes, we learned we weren't ready. We weren't ready to deal with this thing where this guy was standing in our office and 15 minutes later, he's killed on the highway. It's one of those things where we talk about post-traumatic growth. So I give her that kudos to that because she brought that forward where all of us were kind of, I don't remember talking about this thing. It's important to harvest that information from other people and establish that communication by appreciating your employees' experiences out there. Age, life experiences, social upbringing are much more of a reliable predictor of behavior than your date of birth. I mean, what if you simply met people where they are and adjust your approach to them individually? I mean, of course, some people will completely identify with these generational stereotypes. Of course they will. There'll be people out there that you're like, boy, that is a Gen Z. Wow. I mean, they are full on like that. But we also know a lot of people won't identify with any of these things. I mean, there's some 80-year-olds who regularly text. I mean, there's some 23-year-olds who make crocheted blankets. I've worked in enough comm centers to have seen people in their early 20s making crocheted blankets on the floor. And I'm like, holy cow, what are you guys doing? I mean, but this is the thing. Should we assume, oh, no, they don't want to do that. They would rather have this. See, they don't have to identify with all of these things out there. Ask yourself, why has that boomer out on the floor started acting annoyed and unhappy? Maybe they're a little scared because they've worked every day since they were 16 years old, and sooner than they can imagine, guess what? They'll never have to go to work again. And that's a scary proposition. I've retired. I have friends that have retired. You go from one day making 1,000 different decisions to making none. That's a hell of an adjustment. And not only that, a lot of people don't plan correctly for their retirement. So there may be money strapped. Maybe something's going on. And it's like, oh my gosh, is that a lot of pressure on somebody who's saying, I never really thought I would reach this age. I never really thought I would reach retirement. I should have planned for it. When I hired a lot of people in my career, I would always tell them, hey, you've got to prepare for this stuff. 30 years comes up very quickly, very, very quickly. We need to start thinking about these things. So when you see that boomer on the floor, you don't just say, well, they're a boomer. That's why they're acting like that. They're an old person. They're grouchy. And we have to have these things. What about the Gen Xer? What about that Gen Xer on the floor out there? He's trying to manage multiple drop-offs every morning, handling 3 kids, working overtime just to stay afloat. Sure. She seems a little preoccupied and distant at work. Maybe she's just, damn it, exhausted. She's got a lot of stuff going on out there. And maybe we don't even think about that because we're so convinced Gen X, you know, they are. What about this one? What about that millennial who asks for a raise after 2 months? And you're thinking, you are so entitled. Listen to you. You want a raise after 2 months on the job? Maybe it's because that generation has acquired more debt, more personal debt than any generation before them. Does that put a lot of pressure on somebody? Yeah. Maybe they think, how do I get out of this increasing debt load every month? I've got to find more money. I've got to do something. Do you ever think that maybe adds a lot of pressure to somebody? Yeah. We can't just assume a generation's like that. We can assume that guy on the floor that's acting that way has got something going on. I mean, suddenly when you see people in their world, we're not just talking about generational stereotypes. We're talking about John or Kathy over there. And maybe we can discover a common space between them and say, man, let me treat people as individuals. Consider this. What about a millennial growing up in South Los Angeles? They'll probably have their own unique life experiences, but very different expectations and behavior from a millennial from a small town in Iowa. Now, see, if we just assumed everybody was of that stereotype, they must be alike. But because of their social upbringing, because of where they experienced, of how they experienced life so far, that has changed and altered them. And we have to think of them as that individual who coming in the door with that experience, and not just a Gen Z or a Libra or a Gemini We have to consider these things out there. Remember, these generational labels are not an exact science, and they're not always accurate. They're not. So maybe we should practice a little bit of generational humility. I mean, it may make our workforce and relationships better. When you start talking about generational labeling, that can lead to stereotypes, unfair ideas of behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs. If you hired somebody, I'll tell you what, let me tell you personal experience. I hired somebody years ago who was a little older. She was not a 20-year-old. She was a little bit older. She was quite a bit older than most of the people. When I put her out on the operations floor, people were like, Doug, why would you hire somebody that old? They probably don't even know how to work the damn computer. And I'm like, you realize they went through a background, they went the testing process, they went through an interview process, they went through training at our academy, and they were successful at that, right? So you're assuming they wouldn't be based on their age and not how their performance is. And it sometimes it just throws people because they're so used to saying they're that age, that's what's going on. Instead of looking at them as an individual and saying, what is their experiences? Because I have a lot of experience with technical stuff. We do production value for these We Speak Dispatch broadcasts we put out. I mean, that is a lot more than just sitting there going, okay, let's make something. I mean, there's a lot to these things. So I don't consider myself a Gen or a boomer. I mean, bridging that communication divide is going to be by enhancing communication, considering people as individuals with their own life experiences. It's essential to building a harmonious workplace. I mean, it's easy to assume, it just is, that boomers, Gen Z, millennials, Gen X generation are so incredibly different. Oh my gosh, they're so different. But nobody likes the idea of being grouped together based on their birth date. And then assuming their likes, their dislikes, their styles, behaviors, hopes, dreams, all that based on nothing that's real. Based on the fact that maybe we should start looking at people as individuals and saying, wow, this person's got some individual ideas out there. Maybe we should consider these things. A lot of times people, when we talk about recruiting and things like that, I hear it all the time. People are like, we have to recruit specifically to this generation. How do we get to them? How about making this job where it's somebody we want somebody who wants to have this kind of a job, not just targeting some, random generation people. Let's get somebody who wants this job and wants to stay in this job forever. This is a very important job we do out there. I mean, a recent study stated that it's much more valuable to focus on individual differences than generational differences. I mean, we need to acknowledge there are some real generational distinctions, just not a one-size-fits-all stereotype. Did you know, this is a good one, did you know that older generations attend religious services more regularly than younger generations? Just a fact. It's not based on their age, it's based on an age grouping situation. It affects everybody. With every successful generation, drinking alcohol has decreased. Well, I don't necessarily believe that, but and Gen Zers are reporting more mental health issues compared to prior generations. Do you know why? Think about it. What did they grow up with? COVID. COVID told them, hey, put masks on, put plastic everywhere, don't touch anything, do all these things to protect yourself out there. It's so scary. That's enough to make anybody crazy. But it's one of these things where we have to think, what did people grow up with? What was their experiences? I mean, that's what forms personalities and forms your abilities, is that whole social upbringing that you had out there. But unfortunately, the U.S. has become one of the most age-segregated societies in the world. The young and old barely interact except for families. This is why I pushed so hard to have our senior people sit with our very junior people just for the day, just to share experiences and go out and talk to them, get the conversation going, talking about experiences they had. It's a great learning tool for everybody. I mean, the generational stereotypes between ages may cause us to miss out on positive benefits from generational connections. Maybe they came in the door with some great experiences. I've hired people from the military. I had a couple people that were in country, in Iraq. And when they were on the floor, they were talking about this, and you could hear them talking about their experiences of people that didn't experience that are being talked to by people that did experience that. I can't just say, well, he's a millennial. He went over there and did that. No, it's his personal experiences. We have to consider these things. All in all, if we want to make our workplace a better place, we need to get away from stereotyping, stop comparing generations to each other. I mean, people can offer a lot of things to each other. Well, let me just ask you all, what do Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, and Tom Brady all have in common? Now, I know you're saying they're great sports people. My gosh, they are wonderful sports heroes out there. True, but they also reportedly had great mentors. No matter what your area of life, a mentor can help you accelerate your success. Mentors offer accountability, experience, and can help you see the big picture because they've already been there. This is why I try to always tell people, share your experiences, talk about what happened, even the bad stuff. Talk about what you learned out of that. Talk about, well, how did you go through these things? Because I'll tell you what, we can all improve our performance by talking to people that have gone through it already and said, what did you learn out of that? Because if I get that kind of a call or I get that kind of an incident on the radio, I need to make sure I'm ready to handle these things. Experience is a good thing to have out there. Some people want to walk away from it, but it's a very good thing. Are you encouraging your tenured employees to share their knowledge and be a mentor? If not, you're missing out. I've had some great mentors in my career. Some people that have been on the job just a little bit longer than me, but they shared their experiences with me. The person that trained me was Sandy. Sandy she's got a year on me. She's only been on the job a year more than me. I think I was her first trainee. She shared some experiences that she had when she was in training that helped me get through training. Because I said, my gosh, she went through the same thing I'm going through. And look she said, this is how you get through it. This is how you make it. Instead of just saying, well, Doug's a boomer and he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. No, it was like, wait a minute, because I did start the job a little bit later than most. I mean, I didn't come in the door as a 20-year-old. So it's like we have to think to ourselves, wait a minute. Mentorships is something that people can learn from. And this gets away from the generational stuff of, well, they don't have nothing to offer. They're getting ready to retire. Please. They probably worked on pagers. Okay. But did you learn something on pagers? Did you learn stuff that maybe we don't have today? We get so reliant. I'll give you an example. You guys all know who Sully Sullenberg is, the guy that landed 1549 in the Hudson River. Sully was giving a speech the other day, and he was saying he is more concerned than ever about pilots nowadays that are so reliant on technology to fly that aircraft. Because I don't know if you know this, but around 800 feet off the ground, it goes to autopilot. And autopilot basically takes them most of the way out there to landing. It's like, and he said, wait a minute, these people need to know how to fly that airplane in case of a major shutdown or a major problem on the airplane. They need to know how to exactly jump right into it and do it. But they've become so reliant on technology, he's afraid they've lost that skill. And I said the same thing. I said, you know what? We're getting so reliant on all the technology we have, which is awesome. But if we lost that skill, if something should happen and everything fails, can we go back? Or is it one of these things where it's like, oh my gosh, the CAD's down, I'm out of here, I'm going home. We have to think, how do we get that stuff? You know how you get that? Talking to people that went through it before you and saying, what did you do? How did you prepare yourself? How did you stay ready to handle something? Because you can't stop in the middle of something because the CAD goes down or something happens. You can't just say, well, that's it. I can't deal with any more calls. You have to function on. That's where mentorship really comes into play out here. And I know a lot of times we think about mentors as that senior person on the floor, but guess what? There's a term out there in the business world called reverse mentoring. I hope you've all heard about that before. Reverse mentoring, because it talks about mentorship is not a one-way street. Your age, experience, and expertise has nothing to do with the value you bring to the table. Maybe you've got some outside experience that you could share. Maybe you've had some experience just because you've been on a year. You probably have had some good stuff. Talk about that with people. Share that stuff. Be a mentor to people. I mean, you have just as much to contribute as to those who are seemingly more experienced than you. In the business world, and I love this saying out there, I do a lot of research in the real business world. I go out there and do a lot of research out there and bring it into comm centers and say, we should be using this. When I found that term reverse mentorship, I was like, that makes complete sense. Because we think mentor has got to be somebody who's been on a long time. But in reality, it's what experience do you have? What experience do you have? Remember a minute ago, I told you about that millennial that was living in South LA, probably had a different experience growing up than the guy from Iowa. Do you think they could share those experiences and say, this is what I went through? This is what I experienced? Yeah. And sometimes we get so stuck on stereotypes of age groups, we just forget what the value is of these people. What do they actually have out there? I mean, learning styles have changed. They have. I mean, the world is a more multimedia type thing. My brother's a high school teacher, and he said, man, it's like everything's got to be on, like, we have to do production value of classes and things like that just to make learning better. It's not because somebody's age group, it's to make learning better, that people can get it. When I do our CTO, our training for success class, I talk about who's been training your kids when they were little kids. Maybe Sesame Street, maybe Conjunction Junction, what's your function? I learned more about politics by listening to A Bill is a Bill up on Capitol Hill than anything else out there. But we have to think to ourselves, wait a minute. That stuff was teaching us how to do these things because it made learning fun. And I want to learn like that. So it's not an age thing that changed. It's the idea people will learn better in a good environment. And I talk about that all the time in our class when we do our training for success class. I mean, we may have to try new approaches to recruiting. I heard this the other day. I heard somebody saying that, well, we have to recruit people that are like the younger generation. So we got to go like here. Why can't we just recruit everybody who wants this job? Why do we got to single it out to this group right here? Oh, that's who's going to make it. Because I'll tell you what, I was a damn good dispatcher up until my last year. I missed that job. I wish I'd still do that job. It's one of these things where we have to think, wait a minute, just because somebody is of an age group doesn't mean they don't want this job. And we have to kind of consider these things. Training, that's changed over the years. Training should be a good experience. It shouldn't be bad. When I do our training for success class, that's my message, is training should be a good experience for everybody. It shouldn't be a rite of passage or some kind of thing. It should be a good experience. And finally, leadership is a big one. Leadership has changed over the years. Back when I was a brand new person, if the supervisor said, do this, you did it. There was no like, let me think about it, let me consider things. Nowadays, leadership is more about the way you talk to people. And it's important to have that kind of stuff. It's important to have those kind of abilities to have this thing out there. It really doesn't matter when somebody was born. It's all about establishing that good communication, treating people as individuals so they can build a generational bridge that everybody can cross. I mean, I love that saying right there. The reason you should treat everyone as an individual is because everyone is different. You're different. I'm different. We all bring different things to this job. We got to get away from thinking it's that generation. Let's give them time off for pet leave because their goldfish died. Let's give them 3 days off. This is a business. This is a thing you should be proud of what you do. And you should be saying, man, what I do is so important. It's much more important than any other job out there. And we talk about debunking generational stereotypes. And that's a big thing for me, is debunking this stuff, because it just drives me crazy that I see this kind of thing. It's, despite the persistence of generational labeling, people continue to show that these stereotypes are not as significant as we think. They're not. And I hope I brought some light to this today to kind of say, you know what, let's talk about this thing and let's think, are those generational stereotypes real? Or should we be considering them as just a fun thing like horoscopes? I mean, when we start adjusting our work based on, well, how these new people are, they're going to like this, they're going to like to have finger painting and making puzzles. That's crazy. This is a business. We deal with serious things out there. I love to have fun at work, and we had so much fun at work. But I also understood it's a serious job. I didn't spend 30 years on the job just because I'm playing. I spent 30 years on the job because I knew the job we did was important. Other important factors driving workplace behavior, such as personality, career stage, life experiences, are much more relevant than generational labeling. Much more important out there. We have to consider these things. It's much more productive to focus on individual experiences rather than placing people into those generational stereotypes. And that's so true. Think of everybody as individual. Like I talked about earlier, when you can suddenly look at somebody and think, why are they acting this way? Maybe there's a reason behind it. Maybe it's not because they're a Gen Z or a Gen M or Gen X. Maybe there's something like that. Maybe there's something going on with them personally. Instead of us assuming it's their age group. Let's figure out what the heck it is out there. My last captain I worked for was constantly telling me, Doug, are you some kind of psychologist or something? And I'm like, why is that? He said, every time I go by your office, there's somebody sitting in there. And I'm like, because I've established trust with these people. They'll tell me what's going on. If somebody walks past my door, my office, and they're going, hi, Doug, I know they want to come in and tell me something. Something's happened in their life personally that's going to impact the work floor out there. I mean, if you have a massive fight with your spouse and you come to work, are you going to be at your best that day? Because if I hear one more person say, yeah, leave your problems at the door, can you do that? We're humans, and we can't do that kind of thing. I mean, it's important to kind of consider that stuff out there. So when we talk about debunking these things out there, it is about treating people as individuals, not as a stereotype. I mean, I love this saying that I got. This is from Mark Twain. The two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. And I think for most of us, we're in public safety because we're supposed to be. I just feel it in our bones that, you know what? I think those calls that I've answered were meant to be answered by me. And I think for all of us out there that are in this job, we have to kind of think to ourselves, why did I get into this job? Did I just fall into dispatch? Did I just fall into this thing and couldn't find nothing else to do? No, you're in this job and you fought to get this job and you wanted to get this job because you knew it was an important job. And you got that, you know that you're supposed to be answering those calls and saving those lives and doing what you got to do. And it's important to have these things. So it's important to kind of consider, you know, that emotional connection to this job. When I hear people talk about recruiting that generation, oh, get this younger generation out there, maybe we should talk about the emotional connection to this job and how we only want people in this job that want to be in this job, that feel that need, that desire to be in this job. And I hear so many times that people devalue the job. Well, we're just looking for a warm body in the seat. No, we're looking for the right people. You know that saying that says your people are your most important asset? I don't think that's real. I think it's a wrong statement. It should say the right people. I mean, that's what we're thinking about now, not the wrong people. The right people are your most important asset. Are there people doing our job right now that shouldn't be doing our job? Yes, we all know it. We should not tolerate that kind of stuff. This is an important job. And we should say to ourselves, you know what? I don't care how long you've been on the job. If you're acting that way, we got to find out why and make you better. It's important to have these things. You know, our company motto of leave a legacy, if you've seen it on the bottom of all of our screens out there, it's our whole thing of leave a legacy. It reminds everybody that your legacy is being built every day through every interaction, one person, one day at a time. You know, what's really funny is the fact that when I talk about this leave a legacy stuff in every class, because I always end with this, I try to tell people that, you know, you're building that legacy, whether you're a trainer and you're training somebody who's going to go on to train somebody else. And they're going to say, I'm training you the way my trainer trained me. It was so good. And I did that throughout my career. I told everybody I trained, Sandy trained me this way, and it's such a good way. It works. And this is what I'm talking about. And we build these legacies by the way we talk to people, the way we talk to each other. You know, when I talk about leadership, I'm always talking about the fact that, you know, I can tell a really good leader, somebody understands it, is when they're working the operations floor and they're sitting next to somebody that maybe they don't like, and they have a very difficult call, and you know they did, and you have enough gravitas to tell that person, hey, man, are you okay? Are you all right? That sounds like a tough call. You all right? Because that takes away from the little petty, oh my gosh, you know, I don't like you because we don't go to lunch together. And that makes us all humans and talking to each other. That's what it's all about out there. Everybody's legacy is going to be different. It is. Your legacy might be your kids. It may be a commitment to improving something. It might be making a difference in somebody's life, in one life, or hundreds of lives. Like many of you do all the time. Every single day, you guys have a chance to make a difference to somebody and build that legacy. I mean, I talk to people all the time that do EMD. I never did EMD. It looks very complicated, hard to do, very emotion driven. But when I talk to people that do EMD and they talk about the feeling that they get when they know they save somebody's life, it's unbelievable. It's so powerful to think of. That's a legacy that you can say, this person's walking around the streets right now because of what I do. what I say. It's important to have that stuff. I mean, legacy is leaving something for people. It's not leaving something for people. It's leaving something in people. And I try to always remember that stuff. I mean, I always wear this bracelet that says leave a legacy on it. Our shirts say leave a legacy, because I want you to know how important your job actually is. Your job is building a legacy out there. And we don't want it to be tarnished by you saying, well, this generation's that, or that generation's this, or this is going on. Let's make this place a proud thing we want to work at. Let's make it something we should do. You know, I thank you for your attention today. I mean, I know I'm about 10 minutes early, which is nice. You can take a little break right now and go do something else. But I'll tell you what, if you want to get a hold of us, you can scan that QR on the screen, or you can contact us, Showalter Company, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. We're all over the place out there. But I will tell you that we do approach training differently than most, because I do a lot of research in the private sector and I see what works out there and I bring it into what we do and think, why aren't we doing this? How come we're not considering these things? So it's very important out there to have that stuff. So Keely, if you're out there someplace, you can come back on here. Thank you everybody for making comments. I love that kind of stuff out there. And I see some people have been watching. I see some people have been watching that Disney Plus to get the conjunction junction stuff.
I was like, oh my God, I forgot all about that. I'm so happy to see that it's actually out there in space, because I need to put my kid in front of conjunction junction. Like, are you kidding?
Everybody always says that. They always say, like, I never really thought about that, but it was exactly training you in a fun way. When you went to school, right, or you went to work at the comm center and they throw the NCIC manual at you, you're like, holy crap, this is not fun. This
is not fun. This is a terrible way to train me, because chances are I am just clicking through it, or somebody's already written the answers and I'm just
exactly
getting the questions. I remember, like, there was a piece of paper that used to be passed around between the cops. They'd be like, here you go.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just pass your NCIC stuff. It'll be fine.
Yeah. That's exactly how they used to do it. They used to say, we do the class, and then you'd be given the answer, basically. You're like, okay, this may be on the test. Anyway.
Like, wait a minute. Moving on, just pay attention to this part, because you might see it. Right? I wonder if, like, this is a generational thing, or if this, because now, I mean, I love this subject, right? Because you see the divide and how training has changed throughout the years. And when I started as a baby dispatcher, which I'm only in my 20s, so I don't know how that's possible. When I started a long time ago, there was we did the CJIS training, we did the NCI's training, and our job was to collect the answers and then pass it off to patrol, because they just wanted to get their jobs done. But, like, what was so significantly different about our jobs? It was like, oh, well, you guys have the time. Do I, though? Do I really? And I just see the hard stance now, like the line that's drawn in the centers now. Like, no, we're doing our own training, and this is important stuff. Yep. This is important stuff. And I feel like that has significantly changed, where we're kind of now in this mindset where we do important work and the training we do matters. It matters just as much as our counterparts out in the field. And to try to get people to wrap their heads around that at first, to see that transition, that was wild. That was, you know, to see.
Yeah, that's why I started this training for success thing, because I'm like, I understand people are getting book knowledge on how to train somebody. This is what you should follow. This is how to use this. But the actual, like, application of how to make somebody learn, that's different. I mean, that's way different than this is book knowledge. And that's why I try to teach it as this is how you get to this topic. So
this is how you get there, right? There, so. You know, you brought up in your session, you brought up, like, your first trainer, the person that trained Sandy, I believe you said her name was.
Yeah.
And I had a Betty, right? And we used to call her Betty Boop. I had a Betty, and, you know, she used to she would whack my knuckles with a ruler if I reached for the playback button. And because I am so gun shy from that experience, that when I moved on to a different center, when I started training at that different center, I was like, you can't touch the playback. You can't touch the playback. And I remember the eye roll that I would get from the newer dispatchers. They were like, why not? It's available. And I was like, listen, technology is great until it isn't. And we had that experience today where I was trying to help out Ricardo on the back. It's great. It is a wonderful tool to have, but then when it fails in a big way now.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember doing that to a dispatcher. Of course, I wasn't using a ruler. There was no abuse happening at the time.
Training should be a good experience. No.
This is terrible. But I will say he thanked me because we had a failure where our playback wasn't working. I will not use the name of the company at the time that we had, but it failed, and it failed in a big way, and there was no playback. And he thanked me because he immediately thought, oh, well, I need to just ask them to repeat their message.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so trivial, but it's like you sometimes just have to rely on how we used to do things. Write down how many times have we all lost our CAD? I mean, that's the
And
CAD.
not only that, there's the big ransomware attacks that have been going on out there right now. So, and these people have been down. I know one in Maryland's been down for like 2 weeks. And they're like, I said, how was that feeling when you guys went down and you didn't? And they were just like, we want to all quit. I'm like, oh, you need to automatically just roll over to paper and start writing, start hurrying up.
Writing. But then you get the cramp in the hand because nobody has to write like they used to.
Well, it's carpal tunnel at that point and workman's comp. But
right. And they've been traumatized by the punch clock.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So like, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who's making nice comments over there on the other side. That's very nice. Thank you very much. If you guys need anything, please just send us an email or whatever, and we'll be glad to help you out until we can for you all. But tomorrow's class I'm doing is based on, and it's just loosely based on, A Christmas Carol. So I'm just saying, I know Jameson did the whole 12 Days of Christmas. I'm doing A Christmas Carol tomorrow, so
I love it. You're going to have to all tune in, everybody. Yes. Our next sessions begin at 11:15, so take your break, go hydrate, grab a snack. We're dispatchers. Go bring all of your drinks to the table. That's how this works.
Yes, you could get that kind of thing out there and say, I'd like to get an adult beverage. No, it's only 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock over here. So.
I mean, it's like it's almost 11 on the East Coast. We could maybe work that out.
Very true. Very true. All right. Well, thank you very much.
All right, everybody. Thank you. We'll see you in the next sessions.
Thank you.